Hello, good morning, everyone. Let me turn on my video here, and then we will get started. All right. Well, it is a little past quarter 2, so I'm going to get started today, and I'm going to ask Janine. I made you co-host. I hope you don't mind if you're able to let people in as they jump into my waiting room. For those that don't know me, I am David Smith, principal at Rocky View Schools here, and I've had the privilege over the years to be working with folks like yourself in terms of office staff. And I have just really come to appreciate and understand the not just the amount of work, but the complexity of juggling so many things in your position. So today I was asked to talk about a couple chapters from one of my favorite coffee time books. And by the way, just before I get going, if you've got any questions, throw it in the chat there. Once I get going on the presentation here, I'm actually going to be moving the screen over. So you'll be able to see me, but I won't be able to see you. So if you have any questions or any comments, feel free to just drop it in the chat there, and Janine can interrupt me if need be. So this little book, the little book of stress release, you might have got this last year. If you're new to us, maybe not, but Dr. David Posen, he talked to us last year, and he's just wrote a wonderful little book on just little things that we can read, just when we're sitting, maybe just waiting for dinner to happen, or just, probably shouldn't say that. I never wait for dinner to happen. I'm the one making dinner. But after dinner, when I'm sitting down, sometimes I'll just grab this and I'll give a read. And you know what's neat about books like this is it's not so much that you're under stress and you need to read something, but it's more so preparing us for what's coming. It's sort of like, if I have to lift something really heavy and I know that that lift is coming, I'm going to do things in my life to start preparing for that heavy lift. And emotionally, really, it's no different. Sometimes when we strengthen ourselves emotionally and thinking about some things before they happen, when they start coming down our way, we've already got things in our arsenal ready to jump in and put to use, because we've sort of prepped ourselves emotionally and mentally. So today we're going to do a little bit of that prepping. The 2 chapters that I'm looking at, one is taking a look at the perspective or reframing our work when needed, and then 2, task management. Now, I know I only got 45 minutes, so I'm going to go through just a couple slides here. And then at the end, I'll stick around. If you do feel like chatting about anything, don't feel like you need to put on your camera unless you want to. I can't see you, unfortunately, so it's completely up to you. Okay, let's get started. So when we think about our jobs and we think about the position that we're in, the very first thing to keep in mind, and again, this information is going to come from the little book of stress relief, so it's not like you had to read the chapter, is that it starts with you. And what I mean by that is it's not so much that it's your responsibility to do X in your job. What I mean by that is who you are as an individual comes into your job, which is really important. From a standpoint of when we think about our personality, we can think about how does our personality impact our job and the people around us? How does my personality impact culture? And from this point of view, I am not talking about anything negative. I'm talking about what are the benefits of who you are as an individual coming into the position that you have. So your office culture is a mixture of individuals coming together, all responding to stress points and interactions differently. In my experience, I've rarely come across, or I've rarely worked with people where all of our personalities are the same. I mean, if you're in that situation, I would say that's quite unique. So how we respond to stress is going to be different from one person than to another. And that's really important. In fact, that's really positive. So your personality comes with certain skills. For instance, I've worked with individuals that have a very straight ahead way of dealing with questions and a straight ahead way of getting right to the point with individuals. And so when they're talking with someone, let's say a parent or a teacher walks in or makes a phone call, they're able to hear something and then they ask a question straight away about what's needed and what happens next. They're very purposeful, we'll say. And that type of personality suits administration, for instance, really well. If you're juggling a lot of things in the air and you need to know exactly where that person's coming from so you can help them out, that's really going to work well. I've worked with other individuals where they listen, but the way that they ask questions, they sort of come around it from the back end or a little bit more gently. And that is really helpful for individuals that maybe are nervous or have some trepidation coming into the school, and they appreciate that gentler approach. Either way, the personality for different types of people matters. That personality also affects your office staff. So when you're in a meeting and some individuals go straight in to talk about a practical application, where someone else is taking that practical application a little bit more emotionally, there's potential for some friction to happen there. But the beauty of that is that both personalities suit a purpose and both type of personalities are needed. So I bring this up to sort of frame as we talk about dealing with stress and as we talk about how to manage our tasks and things like that, realize that all of this is informed with just who you are. And it's really interesting, like, why do you think that we have put so much study, and I mean in terms of psychology, into looking at personality, knowing that our personality can change? When we have certain traumas in our life, it can change our personality. Lived experiences can change personality. So why do we spend time looking into these things? Young, Myers and Briggs, like there's a host of surveys you can take. All these surveys and interests based pieces are all about helping to inform us how we might react to certain situations, what are positive and what's negative. So take that with you today as we start to just reframe some of these things. Keep in mind that we are finite humans. So by finite, I mean we can't do it all. Sometimes we think that we can, especially when we've got families. We really want to be making sure that everything happens for the kids and moving things forward, and we take on a lot. But part of this reframing right off the hop is understanding that we can only do so much in our day. And that's something that I deal with myself every day, is constantly having to say, I could keep on pushing, but tomorrow it's just going to be a new round of pressures, a new round of to-dos, and it's never going to end. So I need to stop now for my personal wellness and pick this up tomorrow. So when we're looking at reframing, starting with our personality, a couple things we can keep in mind. One is that you're not alone. There are many people that are in the same position as your job within Rocky View. And really, throughout Alberta and throughout the world, of course, but certainly within Rocky View, when we're looking at a problem, don't feel like you're stuck in that you need to solve it yourself for some reason to say, okay, I've done this. The reality is we can spend a lot of time trying to fix a problem when, if we had just given someone a call, within like 5-10 minutes, we've got an answer. So first we want to seek, and the seek is saying, okay, I've heard that we've talked about maybe this particular problem. Where might I find an answer? And I'm going to get really practical with you as we move along. So it would be like saying, I'm going to go into the Power School office staff site, and I'm going to search up this particular question, or I'm going to put in this keyword and see if I can find an answer. For myself, if I can't find that answer within 5, maybe 10 minutes, then I do a full stop. And I'm like, okay, I'm not finding it in the places that I know to look. So now I need to ask. And that's where you can call a friend. That's where you can talk to your neighbor, administrator, or just, someone at the Power School team, wherever, whether it's finance, and it's a quick call. And the beauty of this is once we get that answer, we can learn. So the next time this swings around, we're not calling back to that individual asking the same question. And then as we learn from that, the next piece is lead, so that when someone calls you, you can help them out. And so this is all part of that factor of we're not alone. We're not alone. We can do this together. Remembering that you can only do so much. And I don't mean that from a standpoint of this is overwhelming, but just realizing that in our day, in our 6.5-hour day or 7-hour day, we can only accomplish so much. And so we want to think through about what those things are that we need to actually do in that day. And we're going to talk about that here momentarily. When we reframe, often when we're thinking about our job, there has to be something around positive thinking. And what I mean here is it's not so much saying that just think positively and everything will work out. That's not what I'm getting at. When we think about our emotional awareness and when we think about our outlook, you'll notice that more and more, especially in the last decade, we keep coming back to one of the elements of reframing is to look for gratitude. And I know that seems trite maybe for some of us, saying, yes, you're going to look on the positive side, but it's much more than that. When we're thinking positively, it's more so around thankfulness. So looking at our jobs from a standpoint of, I know that this is stressful or overwhelming, but I'm thankful for. I have to do that periodically throughout the week. When things start to seem like they're crashing in, and because they're outside of my circumstance control, sometimes it feels overwhelming. But when I do slow down and when I do look at why am I in this position? And for me, I'm in this position to help families, to lead students, to lead teachers, and to make a difference. I need to reframe that for myself because it puts those stressors into the right box for me. So for you, what are those things for your job? What are the things that you are thankful for in your position? At my old school, I actually had some things written out. It wasn't long. It was just, maybe it was about a paragraph. And I actually typed it out and I put it in just above my telephone. And every once in a while, I would read through, and what was on that piece was one, what were the priorities in my life in terms of family, my beliefs, and some thankfulness pieces about the job that I'm in. And that always helped me to reframe, especially if I just got off the phone with a difficult conversation. So you can think about some of those practical things. And then, of course, reframing is focusing on what is, not necessarily what is missing. So the words that you say, the words that you use, and we're getting back to the positivity, they have influence. They influence the people that you work with. They influence the parents and the students that you talk with. Jay Lafferty, I really appreciate this quote. Words and thoughts are the weapons against stress. It's really freeing to be able to put yourself out there, maybe in conversation with a colleague or someone on staff, when you're able to talk about elements of stress in your day from not necessarily a standpoint of complaining or this is so hard, but just being able to say, this conversation was difficult today, but we were able to reconcile it by doing X. Just having that conversation, it's amazing how the stress just starts coming down. I mean, we tell our kids all the time, don't bottle things up. But as adults, we often bottle things up simply from the standpoint of Sometimes we don't want others to know that we're having stress in a certain area. We want to be able to, we'll say, have the feeling or even illusion that we can handle it all when we know that we can't. And yet at the same time, we don't want to feel like we're complaining. So where's the balance there? The balance is the combination of words, being able to articulate something, but also being able to think a certain way. So keep in mind that the thoughts, the reel that we play in our head around whether something's a deficit or a positive, it plays on how we handle that stress. So keep that in mind as we keep going forward and taking a look at some of these things. Another aspect when we're looking at our work-life balance and our work-life stress is looking for maybe what's missing from in terms of perspective and distance. Our jobs, typically, if you're in it as a vocation, as a profession, it's the long game. And so if we overdo things, if we don't see ourselves as that finite human and put some boundaries in place, what happens is there's risk of burnout. And this is where that perspective piece can come in. And burnout can really happen in two different ways. So one, it could be the need for solitude. And, in our busy lives, sometimes we think, man, there's no time for me to take for myself. My family's super busy. I've got responsibilities in my life. Tung, 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 tung. The reality is, when we seek a little bit of solitude in our life, it allows our brain and our hearts to start going through a couple thoughts and a couple processes. In fact, when you take a look at the research around solitude, you'll see that there's so many incredible benefits. Our brain processes can begin to get streamlined from a standpoint of the decisions and the experiences that we've had in our job. Our brain will start to process those decisions and allow us to either reframe or rethink how we might handle that decision in the future. Solitude brings and allows for some emotional stability. And we're going to talk about the antithesis of this as well. But just realize, if you need solitude, these are some of the things that can really help. It brings self-awareness, clarity. For some folks, it can start like an emotional healing of things that have maybe even just small things that have occurred in your day. Maybe someone spoke to you in a way that was hard for you to hear, and they didn't even realize that they had, that personality of straight ahead. And maybe you felt like, man, that could have been a little bit more sensitive, and you take that home with you. That solitude might give you that opportunity to release some of those things. And it really does protect our health. So if you're going to seek solitude, and I don't necessarily mean trying to get a whole weekend away from your family or job, I just mean schedule time in your life for being quiet, and then protect that time. Make it personal, and make sure that there are no distractions. And you know what distraction I'm talking about, right? It's the classic distraction of our phone and even family. I know for myself, when I seek solitude, I have to do it early in the morning. It's the only time that everything is calm. Even the dogs are calm in the morning. So I use that to set up my day. So where do you find that in your day and in your week? The other side of things is, for some of us, we actually seek a lot of solitude because maybe we're more introverted by nature. And so the opposite is true. Because we spend so much time to ourselves, and because we think through things quite a bit and potentially overthink some things and go down a certain rabbit hole, sometimes we need to spend time with people. And this is where the balance of life comes in. And that spending time with people is choosing people in your life, like choosing wisely with people in your life that you know are going to lift you up, make you better, not be pessimistic by nature, to help you bring that balance. And so seek out someone to grab a coffee with after work or anything of that nature. And if there's someone in your life that you just to like to be around, but maybe don't have that strong relationship, even just inviting them, saying, hey, can we grab a coffee sometime? It would be great just to take an hour and spend some time with that person. It's not like you're saying, I'm calling you, can we be friends? As an adult, what I really appreciate is just getting together with people that I respect and just spending some time with them, absorbing a little bit about of who they are to make myself or help myself just be better, help myself bring balance. So if you're that individual that is more towards seeking a lot of solitude in your life, then maybe you need to seek more of that balance of getting together with someone that you respect, and then bring up some of these things about work, or bring out some things that stresses in your life, maybe that you just want to double check. Are you thinking properly on certain things? Really, really helpful, I find. So those things, either seeking some solitude or seeking connection, can really bring some perspective and distance from your work. I don't know about you, but especially in the summertime, there are certain weeks that I do not open up my computer. And I basically say to my staff, and even RVS, because as a principal, there are certain things I have to check on, saying, if you really need to get a hold of me these next 2 weeks, you best call me, because I'm not opening up my email. I need my brain to actually distance itself from work so that when I come back, I am fresh. So that's part of that distance as well. So keeping that in mind and making sure that we're doing that. Okay, I want to switch gears a little bit. So we've talked about that culture piece and sort of not managing ourselves, but just caring for ourselves for stress. And now we're going to jump into some of the practical side of things. Now, your personality and the way that you look at tasks are really going to come in play here. So I might be saying some things here that you're like, no, Dave, that's not how I do things. I like to do a list. Or no, I do not like to do a list. I just want the free flow of the day. So keep that in mind, that what I'm sharing with you now is just some contextual things to think about work. So when we're looking at the busyness of our week, we want to think about, what things do I prioritize? How can I eliminate distractions? And what does that mean when I'm working in a world of distractions? And then how can I interact with coworkers based upon how do I craft my week? So let's jump into these things. You might have seen this before, and this is a Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Individuals. Quadrant thinking about how we plan for our week. And I say week because in a day, we can accomplish things, but the circumstances of our day can be really busy. So we sort of want to think more on a 5-day schedule, as it were. So before we jump into taking a look at these things, let's jump into one of the most difficult things that we face being in the school is how do we manage or prioritize and understand people issues? So this type of thing, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but the quadrant here is really about planning. Okay, it's really about looking at what's urgent and important and how do I work on things. But when we're dealing with people here, there's another aspect. So growing up, my mom was an emergency nurse, and she talked about triage, this idea of triage quite a bit, because she had some really unique things happen in her workday. And I remember once at the dinner table, she was talking about an issue where 2 or 3 individuals came into the hospital, into emergency, all with very major accident, very major issues that they had to deal with. And 3 of them were there. And who do they start with first? Like, who do they manage first when they all need help? And it's not that my mom was there alone, but at that time she was the head nurse. And so she had to direct where the nurses were going to go for the first individual, second and third individual. And I remember thinking to myself, how on earth do you prioritize people? Because we're all important. The difference here, though, is when we talk about triage, it's not that we're going to care for one person and not care for another. We're going to care for all the individuals. And we have to be really smart on how we go about doing that. Some of the people in my life that I've seen do this really well, they do it from this aspect. And I'm going to speak right from a school's aspect. So whether you're finance, receptionist, sec two, dealing at central office with phone calls or people walking to your desk, it's really all the same thing. The great people that I've seen in my life have done these things. When an individual, whether they call to them or they walk in, whether it's a child or a parent, the first thing they do is they have high attentiveness and they stop what they're doing. And what I mean by that, it's not like that practical and pouring coffee, I have to stop and talk. That's not what I mean. What I mean is they take a second and they'll stop a sentence, or they've got some sort of management style that's already in place, but they stop and they look and they make eye contact with that individual, or when they pick up the phone, they don't overtalk and they listen. So the first aspect is stop, listen to what that person is saying. And now here is where the management comes in, is the ask. So you're going to receive, whether it's a problem or a question, and if you're not really hearing you're not really getting anywhere with that individual, so you're not quite sure what they're asking of you, then that's where you interject and you ask a question. And that question is to bring clarity for the situation. I know it seems natural, but it's amazing how many individuals go right from stop to ask and they don't listen. They just stop. Hey, how can I help you? And as that person is talking, they're already going into a solution, and they've forgotten to actually listen to what the person is saying to them. So when we ask and get clarification, however we might do that, then we're able to respond and triage what can happen next. Some of the great people that I've worked with have said things like, does this need to be done right now, or can this wait for the next couple hours? And I've always really appreciated that, because it's like, actually, no, this doesn't need to be done right now, as long as it's done by the end of the day. Really appreciate that. When I'm talking with a parent, sometimes I'm just really clear in helping them understand our processes. So it's like, right now we get a lot of registrations. I'm like, thanks very much. We're going to proceed with this registration. This is going to happen in the next 24 to 48 hours. And then the parent will respond back saying, oh, that's great. Or, well, here's the problem. Is there any way we can fast track this? So we're getting to this piece of, when we're dealing with individuals, we don't want to make assumptions and we want to highly communicate. Okay, let's jump into a little bit from this understanding of what are we talking about with these quadrants. And I'm not going to really jump into this too deeply, but I just want you to be aware of a couple things. In our day, we can look at certain things that are important and urgent. And in a school setting, a lot of important and urgent things happen. Child walks in and he's cut his arm, and you have to help with that cut right away. That's very obvious as an urgent or important. A parent comes in and is visibly upset about something. You're not just going to put them off to the side. It's urgent and you're going to deal with it, and it's important. And these things are dues. So these are, in our day, there's going to be a lot of dues. The trick for our jobs is making sure that the dues of the day are not taking over every other quadrant here. So here's what I mean by that. There are certain things that are important, but they're not urgent. So it's, they're not urgent yet. So it's like processes. So you can see a looming process date. So maybe that process date is demographics have to be complete by September 30th, let's say. And so we know that those things are important because of the list of reasons why that is, but they're not quite urgent yet. But this quadrant, this planning quadrant number 2, has potential to be low stress because we're working ahead. Okay, so this is a great place to live in, is this quadrant 2, where it's not urgent, but we're planning for it. These other quadrants, quadrant 3 is urgent, but not important. And that's where we have to be asking the question and going back to the people side of things, saying, well, what you're asking, actually, when I look at the scope of what's needed, it's not actually important that I do this right now. This can be done tomorrow. And we like to put on the word here, delegate, because what that means is you can either delegate to yourself to do it the next day, or you can delegate that either that individual, well, here's what you can do to do this. This is not something that I need to do, you can do. But when we get caught in here where we're operating in urgent but not important, our days just disappear and we never get up to these top quadrants. And then this last quadrant 4 is not urgent and not important. And these are things we want to eliminate. Typically, people say things like diving too deeply into email. Emails that are just to-do items because they're easy to check off and say, okay, I've done it, and it always feels good to check off, but they're not actually urgent or important, but we've made them urgent and important. And that's just one example. And you can think about in your life what those examples would be. See, here's the problem. When we are stuck in these bottom 2 quadrants, it doesn't allow us to get to these top quadrants of urgent and important unless it's thrusted upon us, or not urgent but important. And then eventually these not urgent things suddenly become urgent, and the stress of our day starts getting away from us. So what can we do about this? This is where it comes into working with your staff, working with your colleagues, and setting up where in your day do you find stressful points, and not to eliminate that stress, but how can you craft and work together? For instance, I've known some staff that say, okay, during this time in the week between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock on Tuesdays, I'm going to spend time just doing the administrative stuff for School Engage. And I'll pick on School Engage because that's a big one. And so while I'm doing that, can you look after the front desk and answer the phone calls? Or while I'm talking with X and meeting with this person about this issue, can you look after these things for this next hour? And then you do the same thing for that individual. And it allows them to start going into that quadrant 2 planning. And then suddenly we start seeing a bit of a balance, rather than just saying, I can do it all, and the craziness of my day, I'll just handle it, it's no problem. The reality is those things will catch up with you. So craft it. Work with those that are in your area and really craft that through. Okay, my time, what do I got time left here? 1:45. Okay, I only got 10 minutes left. So this video here, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, it's a great video just focusing on, and if you get a chance, just type into YouTube. I don't know if I've got an opportunity to show this right now. I'm running out of time here. If you click into this video, what it jumps into is just this thinking of, how do I prioritize certain things in my life? And so if we have enough time, I'm going to come back to this. But it's being able to look at the needs of your day and of your week and planning it out, not just letting it happen to you. Take time and actually go through the calendar of that week and talk to those that you're working with and say, okay, here's what we have to do this week. And so how are we going to accomplish those things? So if there's time, I'll play that video. I'm going to keep on moving on because I'm talking way too much. So this is where the co-workers piece comes in, is work with your staff to say, what can I do within this week to manage the tasks that we have to do collectively so that we stay in this quadrant 2 while looking after people and caring for people. So I put in here control maniac, because honestly, for some of our personalities, especially type A personalities, we really do believe that we can do it all. We believe that we can take it all on, and as long as we just go through the lists, and at the end of the day, we've accomplished a lot. And frankly, type A personalities can do that. The problem is And I can lean into that type A personality myself, so I get it. Sometimes when we do that, when we really control our surroundings, we miss some really special things in our day. We miss that connection piece with people that they're actually looking for from us as well, because we're so focused on what we need to do. So this is where planning out your week and working with your coworkers to really slow things down is going to allow you to connect with people and do the myriad of things that you have to do for your job. And again, all these things we're chatting about are also in the book that we're looking at today. So to end off, it's thinking about these things. First of all, where are you starting from? If you've never thought about your personality in the context of your job, then that's a great starting point. You know, what are great things that you know that you bring to the job, and not saying I need to change my personality to fit this job? No way. What's in you already that you can really bring to your position, and then be able to articulate that if you need to. Step away from your work, whether it's in solitude or with people. Make sure that we're stepping away so that we can reframe what's happening in our day. And even when we have great days, still to reframe it. Did I miss anything in that day? Think through your week. Rather than just having the week happen to you, you get involved in crafting that week, giving time for people, as well as giving time for that quadrant 2 thinking of planning for things that are important but not urgent before they become urgent. And then communicate. I can't express enough the importance of taking a risk and communicate with those that you're working with. It's always a risk. Even the other day when I was chatting with some administrators, we were talking about some certain stressful things in our job. And I articulated one stressful thing in my job that I've experienced in the past. And I visually saw them take a pause for a second. And the reason why they were taking a pause is they were evaluating, Dave just took a risk and shared something, not just a practical thing, but actually shared a little bit about himself. But then the next thing was neat. And that was the conversation we had around that stress that I shared. They were able to say, yeah, I've experienced that same thing as well. And the conversation went that next step. But it always takes a little bit of a risk when we communicate those things. And so I would encourage you to do that with those trusted individuals. Folks, your work has an impact. I cannot stress enough the impact that you have at schools. I've met so many parents that have walked in that are nervous walking in because they've either had a traumatic experience from school or just a really scary experience, and they can't separate that. When they come and talk with you, you are the first person to help take down some of that trepidation wall. So folks, I just want to end off by saying, take time for yourself. Take a look at some of these things and do some reflection in your life, and realize that your job is important. And I hope you feel that it is. I know from an administrator's point of view, it is very important and crucial. You've heard it said before that you're the face of the school. It's very true, but even more so, you are part of the fabric of the culture of a school. So keep that in mind. And it's always just a great time chatting with you. And thanks for hearing me out today. And hopefully this lifts you up a little bit and takes you a little bit further. Well, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if you've got any questions or comments, you're welcome to throw that in the chat. And if not, have a wonderful, wonderful break.
Dave, I tried to put in the YouTube. I was going to put it into